you were talking about Zeppelin meeting Robert Plant and getting to play with Jimmy Page. Tell me about that.
It's it's like, a lot of things I write about in the book are extraordinary and normal at the same time when you're living that life, when you're on tour. When we first met Robert Plant, we'd been on the road for 6 months already. We had already toured with Aerosmith. We had done a tour with Heart. We were doing arenas as an opening act. That was starting to settle in and make sense to us. But then when we met Robert, he was immediately so welcoming and gracious and funny and cool, and everything about him was great. And I could sit there, I could hold in my hand. I'm having a conversation with this guy, and it's fascinating because he's talking about some off the beaten path restaurant he found on the way here today, and it's just a guy telling you a story. Right. And then he gets up and leaves, and then after he leaves, you think, man, that was Robert Plant. Holy shit. It's a whole lot of I can't believe this is happening, and it makes perfect sense that it's happening at the same time. That's how an awful lot of my stuff, a lot of my experiences felt, And meeting Jimmy Page and then playing with Page, it was always that way. When we're in the room together, when we're doing what we're doing, you're just focused. I mean, we're just doing what we're here to do. Right. And he dug what we did. I obviously loved what he was doing. It's all good. But there were many nights where, the gig's over. It was great. We had a laugh. We all had a few drinks. And then I get back to the hotel room and I sit there and go, what the fuck just happened? What was that? So it was great. And I always had the ability. I didn't have to pretend it wasn't super cool. I didn't have any problem admitting, the way I look at it, Page is one of my iconic figures. Like when I discovered Zeppelin, that was, I was just learning to play. I was just in a band for the first time. And the Beatles got me there. The Beatles and then REM, actually. Becoming an REM fan in high school when their first EP came out, and then following them obsessively through the few years. You can be a Beatles fan, but you still don't necessarily think I have to go do that, because how the hell do you do that? Right. Well, you walk into a club and this band called REM no one's ever heard of is playing, and you dig it, you can go, oh, well, I can see that. Like, it's literally, oh, that door is right there. Like, I don't know how you get to Ed Sullivan, and I don't know how you get to the Hollywood Bowl, and I don't know how you make Abbey Road, but I can go play in a shitty club on a Tuesday night, which sounds so obvious, but you need those moments to make you realize, oh, this is how it starts. Right. And so I did that. And along the way, though, I never lost my reverence for the people that I love and respect. I mean, when we're playing with Jimmy Page, we're peers. I mean, he's looking at me. I'm just the drummer, right, and he's the guitarist. Yeah. And it's not arrogance. It's just reality. That's where we were. Right. But I never had a problem saying at that time, like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, it never dawned on me to even have this as a dream. Everybody said, oh, it must have been a dream come true. And what I always said was, well, if it had occurred to me, yeah, right. It didn't dawn on me to dream that this was going to happen.
And, reading about your friendship together, you and Jimmy, your kinship, and there was a hilarious, sweet, and surreal story that you talk about in the book of taking a nap with Jimmy Page.
Yeah. That's a testament more than anything to the entire experience. He let his guard down completely. He knew that he could trust us. And that's not something you think about consciously. And I'm talking about Jimmy Page as a guy who at that time, he'd been Jimmy Page for 30 years. That means there's a giant wall that has to be placed around him in every situation. Sure. Because I can only imagine the craziness that comes at him from all directions at all times. And he enjoyed playing with us. We all got along really well. And I think he was just very comfortable in that setting with us. And it was pretty apparent, that was rare for him. I think we all were aware of the fact that this was special to him for a lot of those reasons. And again, I don't think he's consciously thinking that. Right. This is me with 20 years hindsight too, but it's pretty clear to see. So that was just because it was a very organic, naturally, it fell into place. It was great. We were all having a blast, and nobody overthought it. It just worked out really nicely. So, but there were moments like that. There's plenty of stuff that I wouldn't think to share, that were very you have conversations, and It's like, wow, that means the world to me, or that's hilarious, or I can't believe I just heard that. That's not for anybody's. There's things he would say to anybody. There's a lot of that throughout the whole thing, you know. But the few things that I did share in the book always meant a lot for that very reason. You know, they're just so unexpected and so funny, and that's just what they were.
Right. And, you know, I'm sure it was more obviously for you, but I was sitting there when it ended, reading it and just feeling bummed out about it, that it ended so abruptly.
Well, it bummed me out that it ended. You know, it's also the guy's back is totally screwed up. Okay, fine.
Sure.
When I found out there another element to that later, it was incredibly, you know, I was furious. And I'm writing the book as to my mindset at the time, not in 2019 sitting here, but I was really angry about it. And what I was angry about was there's just elements that you see throughout the book, which is the absurdity of not understanding the moment when it's actually happening. That was something that my bandmates were pretty bad at, not seeing where we were and why we were where we were and acknowledging it and just letting things sit. You know, like there was always this, you know, they're the kind of guys that, well, I'm going to speak figuratively. You know, people that can't ever leave a moment of silence. They have to fill it with words for no reason other than they don't know how to be quiet. And that's what being in the Black Crowes kind of felt like. You know, when things were going perfectly well, it's like, just take a look at this and just fuck it. Let's just not ruin it. Let's not mess it up.
Right.
We don't have to do anything. It's always like, you don't have to be smart. You just got to not be stupid. Right. And we struggled with a lot of those things. And that whole situation was one of those, you know, the idea that, you know, not seeing the trees for the forest, and the conversation he had with Rich that he told me about a year and a half later was just this ultimate example of how can you misread the world around you so deeply. And it's not, you know, Jimmy was gracious and accommodating, and he was offering a lot more. And I have no issue with somebody thinking, I don't know if I want to do that or not. The idea that you would just flat out say no to somebody. He's not Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin at that moment. He's Jimmy Page, the guy that we're having a great time with, who, because he's playing with us, it's literally presented our band with this amazing opportunity we had not created otherwise. We were actually, you know, on life support, and suddenly we're strong again, all thanks to our association with Jimmy. Right. And then he extends himself, and you say no thanks. It's a very, 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 that's a tough thing to get my head around. I don't understand how you can, you know, how is that even a possibility that would be the answer? So that's where all that came from. It's not just, you know, and again, 20 years later, that part still is there. It's like, wow, that's a shocker. I mean, I'm long since over the tour being canceled. That's 20 years ago. You know, I went home, that tour was canceled, and I had a 3-week-old baby at home. And the next day I was back home with him. Trust me, I was like, okay, right, cool. Right. Would have been great, and I was having a great time. But I can, you know, one thing I learned from this band is I can handle just about anything. You know, it's the stuff that would grind my gears was just how unnecessary so much of the drama was, and how our only all of our weaknesses or all of our mortal wounds were self-imposed always.